Hello and welcome to this edition of Wake and Bake News, and I'm your host, Shampoo VTA Kelly Davis. And how are you on this? Today is Friday. I said Friday yesterday. Today is Friday, June 6th, or 24th, 2016. I just woke up and I was fighting with my computer because the camera wouldn't work for some reason. So I'm a little distracted. Hey, all right, so I woke up early because my husband had to take his mom over to physical therapy and made him breakfast. So I'm up earlier. It's about like 8:30 right now. And I found quite a few very interesting stories to talk about. And the first one is actually from the cannabis in Colorado. And it's about a meeting that NORML had recently and the new direction that NORML is going to take as legalization takes hold, which is another what Hanover Fist and I were talking about in the comments below one of my videos recently this week was this is like a roller coaster for us stoners. It's like, you know, 1 minute Mexico's talking about legalizing medical marijuana, the next minute they're not because that Neta, whatever the president guy's name is, kind of a crook. You know, obviously, like Trudeau, okay? So they're liars. They're doing this to get popular, and then they're going to just go with whatever, you know, the crooked police want, because those are their cronies, you know. So they're going to act like they're all on your side, but actually it's becoming much more dystopic than most people realize. They're now just bald-faced lying to you. You know, oh yeah, we all support legalization. It's for the kids, but we're going to drag our feet doing it, bust everybody that's small time, and then we're going to sell you marijuana from government, you know, dealers, basically, and get rid of the black market and all the activists entirely and take it over, which is colonization. So basically what Trudeau is trying to do is colonize marijuana by busting all the, you know, dispensaries in Toronto and everything, and then having his LPs be the only source of this product that you can get. And Mexico is also. So you're getting this like roller coaster, and in our personal lives, people are changing their minds towards us personally, and now we're not the crazy person that, you know, like, you know, with a crazy hippie that liked marijuana, and now we're, holy shit, you're absolutely right. I did not see how serious this issue really was. You know, that's a big fucking woo. It's a roller coaster. So reading the story about NORML is just more of the roller coaster experience, where you're just like, wow, now NORML's talking about how they're going to change what they're doing, because for 30 years they've been lawyers and activists fighting for people to stay out of jail and prosecutions, and now they're going to become business lawyers. It's amazing. So, I mean, it's like they're already planning what they're going to do for the future, because the future is now here. It's like, wow. Okay, so I'm going to read this. It's long. It's like 15 minutes long, because I think, or I did, like, I had to break, and the video only allows me to do 10. I must have done 3 breaks, so it's a little over 10 minutes long. The Cannabis, cannabis.com. Inside a story on where NORML is headed as America gets legalized. Findings from the Aspen Legal Seminar at NORML's annual gathering in Aspen, founder Keith Strope is taking the group in new directions with an eye on legal matters in states that have recreational marijuana, as well as gearing up for pivotal state legalization votes in November. Aspen. When there's meeting of the marijuana minds in the heart of the Colorado Rockies, expect to be enlightened. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws brought together more than 100 registered attendees earlier this month for a 3-day symposium led by legendary legalization activist and NORML founder Keith Strope, marking its 10th year in the resort town, the conference welcomed another always impressive roster of thought leaders from across the country. But a gathering that was once strictly presented and attended by lawyers and has changed in recent years. The Aspen Legal Seminar has expanded into a multi-issue itinerary covering everything from the safety and efficacy of cannabis and Cannabis Business 101 to how pot can cure racism, special estate planning techniques for cannabis business owners. Over the past 3 years, I am seeing more and more criminal defense attorneys representing clients that have come above ground and are now running legitimate businesses, Strope said, of the recent shift in session topics. So more and more of these attorneys are transitioning into marijuana business law, which we're trying to zero in on. The 76-year-old Strope serves as NORML's legal counsel after stints as executive director from 1970 to 79 and 1995 to 2005. He personally programs the Aspen agenda picking topic and assigns speakers. One such topic and its presenter made history this year when erstwhile U.S. Attorney for Kansas Barry Grissom accepted a last-minute invitation to speak about the advantages of ending marijuana prohibition. For the first time, from a federal perspective, Grissom, who stepped down in early April after 6 years on the job, says that decriminalization has always interested me personally. The Washington, D.C. based nonprofit that was founded to fight prohibition is facing a significant shift in its work overall, too, as more and more states adopt legalization and decriminalization. We are putting all our attention on full legalization every time one state flips the switch. The adjunct state are forced to take it that much more seriously, Strope says. Yeah. Okay, I want to stop right there. So as each state legalizes, the states around it have to consider legalizing because they have porous borders, and you have citizens that are going to the state with legal, coming back and going, why aren't we doing this? And I can buy over there, but I can't buy over here. Okay, and suddenly their beautiful state is not so shiny and beautiful anymore. The state next door has greener grass, see? This is what will happen with self-driving cars. Once 1 or 2 or 3 of them get on the road, suddenly those 1 or 2 or 3 will be connected and all the other cars won't. And it will become like a virus. And it will spread till everyone will want a self-driving car because it fits into the norm better than that old gas guzzler that you have to figure out how to fucking drive. If we can see a few states add recreational marijuana in the election, it will give an enormous boost to the issue. Aside from legal recreational marijuana in Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and the District of Columbia, 25 states have approved medical marijuana programs. Pennsylvania and Ohio joined the ranks earlier this year. And in the coming months, more cannabis campaigns will be heating up. Maine and Nevada will be voting on full legalization come November, with Arizona, California, and Massachusetts also likely to see the issue on the ballot. Michigan advocates have filed the lawsuit to get their proposal on the ballot. But even after a state legalizes adult use and possession of cannabis, the legal battles are far from over. Oklahoma and Nebraska have taken legal action against Colorado, pursuing a shutdown of the recreational market in an ongoing court saga that started in December of 2014. Grissom is optimistic about the national picture. This battle will all be over soon versus later, and our nation will have a regulatory scheme so you can have access knowing you're not buying from a cartel or from someone engaged in violence, but from a corner store where you can also pick up a bottle of wine or scotch. Once we have that, I'll be okay. Things are more than okay in Aspen, though the conference's special social atmosphere uh, epitomizes at 3 staple events each evening. The inspiring conversation continues at these pot-friendly festivities where the pioneers of legalization not only pass joints, but plenty of unparalleled knowledge to industry newcomers. I don't smoke cannabis and I don't eat anything infused, but just because that's my choice, that doesn't mean my choice should be imposed on anyone else, Grissom says. An opening reception atop the Gantz Molly Campbell Conference Center roof deck kicked off the weekend against the glowing backdrop of Aspen Mountains. Guests were invited into the mountain gateway for attorney Gary Goldstein, a stunning log cabin situated just off the banks of the Roaring Fork River, for a benefit dinner hosted with his wife, Christine, and prepared by Chef Chris Lanter of Aspen's Cache restaurant. I don't know, Cache, I don't know what it is. A cannabis enthusiast and advocate himself. Lanter took the helm of the Goldstein's Cozy Kitchen, serving up a beautiful buffet of highbrow barbecue, personally topped off guests' plates with his own concoction of an infused olive oil. Just a few days prior to the conference, Goldstein was presented with the inaugural Michael J. Kennedy Social Justice Award for his lifelong commitment to advocacy and support for ending marijuana prohibition as a criminal defense attorney. A senior partner with the firm of Goldstein, and Hilly in San Antonio, Texas, and part-time Aspenite, it was Goldstein who Stroop turned to in 1970 to defend him after a drug bust. In 1972, Goldstein volunteered to represent NORML in Texas, which at that time was the state handing down some of the harshest marijuana sentences in the country, and he has been a staunch supporter ever since. Among other prominent names in attendance was Nevada State Senator Tick Skirlblum, Sergirlblum, something like that, who championed medical marijuana in the state legislation and now has a strain named in his honor at the Las Vegas dispensary. The culmination of the Aspen Legal Seminar happened with a cocktail at Owl Farm, the infamous Woody Creek compound of the late journalist and author Hunter S. Thompson, who NORML counts as the organization's original public supporter. The Aspen experience. Here are even more insights from the major players at this year's cannabis conference, where the discussions were more imperative than ever, with plenty of inspiration for these leaders to continue the charge for change in the months ahead. Keith Stroop, founder and legal counsel, NORML. His personal highlights. I was most impressed by Barry Grissom's session. First of all, until 3 weeks before the seminar, he was the sitting U.S. Attorney for Kansas, the one person appointed by the president to prosecute all federal cases in his state. But he came to see us a few months ago and indicated he would soon be retiring and was looking to learn about legalization and get involved. There was a moment when we as advocates and attorneys felt legitimized by having someone of his stature on a federal side join us in Aspen and respect the work we're doing and recognize we've been right all along and he's now one of us. One of the states of legalization, most people have noticed that we're focusing less on medical marijuana. I think attitudes are changing all across the country on medical use, a process that's already set in motion, and that's going to work itself out. But full legalization remains a challenge. On the direction NORML is heading, what we're really dealing with now are the issues of how we ensure responsible marijuana smokers are treated fairly once it's legalized. There's a lot of work that lies ahead in the category of child custody, social use, employment rights, and impaired driving. It's terribly unfair to fire someone who smokes a joint on the weekend, but is never impaired on the job. But the reality is that every state in the country currently has that power. But our number one priority remains to help establish a legal market. Barry Grissom, partner with the Polsinelli law firm and former U.S. attorney for Kansas conference speech. The advantage of ending marijuana prohibition from the perspective of a U.S. attorney. On getting involved with NORML, I was a U.S. attorney since 2010, and during that time, I, of course, had a lot of interaction with law enforcement, and I had my own personal beliefs about the use of cannabis and if it could work legally. But when you're in my position, you don't share those beliefs. Opposed to just going back into private practice, I figured I have this unique skill set and thought, how can I use that for something more? What can I do to help the cause? So I looked into NORML's online, reached out, and went to DC to meet with Keith. We hit it off immediately, and I told him that when my tenure is over, to keep me in mind. Once he heard the news I had resigned, he called right away and invited me to Aspen. On the experience, I really didn't know what to expect, and it's very rare you turn down a trip to Aspen, but the number of business people who were there showed me that there is a real cannabis economy, and as you are showing us in Colorado, it's here to stay. And the energy, drive, and sheer guts of the folks like Keith and Gary, who have been involved in NORML from the beginning, are all still fighting is so affirming. It was really an amazing experience. On progress. From a federal legalization perspective, it seems as if the people are way ahead of the politicians as exemplified by Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and DC. And I'd assume California very soon. The continuing major player here is education. Sadly, and I say this in jest, but there's plenty of people out there that still believe in reefer madness, who simply don't understand the science during my tenure. I filed an affidavit to have it removed as a Schedule I substance, which is why I'm involved now. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with Keith and NORML in any way I can. On injustice. It's obscene that we as a nation arrest and put people in prison, putting a blight on people's employment records for the rest of their lives just because they want to exercise a freedom of choice that doesn't hurt anyone. Jordan Person, Executive Director for the Denver NORML chapter. On the power of local advocacy groups. When we first started our chapter, it grew very fast and kind of made me realize there really is a strength in numbers, so we thought, let's tackle something major as a group. We sat around and talked about the biggest issue our city faces, which is the restriction of cannabis clubs and social use. We connected with Keith and proposed a plan of what we'd like to do, and he was immediately supportive. Our responsible use Denver. We launched a grassroots movement in January that caught on quickly and brought a huge turnout to our next monthly meeting. In Denver, where the leaders of marijuana policy for our country, and we have around 200 dispensaries without a single place to consume. It's such a problem in our city, and it's going to become a problem everywhere marijuana gets legalized too. If there were no bars, where would people be drinking? On the proposed law, in meetings over the past 6 months with members, stakeholders, and legal counsel, we've been hard at work defining the actual writing the law and actually writing the law. A lot of it is hashing out all of the issues that might come up and how to best implement it in a safe way. Our first hearing for public comment was incredibly eye-opening, and they encouraged us to create an even more refined regulatory framework. On the ballot measure, we're working on collecting the 4,726 signatures against the deadline of August 15th to take it to the vote in November. We have a real opportunity to change history, to provide a solution to an ongoing problem. And the more legislators that we can educate during conferences like this, the faster marijuana policy can progress in our country. Amelia Gant, Cannabis Industry Practice Group co-chair and attorney with the Gary Schwarbert Bar law firm, on attending for the first time. I got connected with Keith through my growing cannabis client network, who said, hey, we're seeing this big sea of change with legalization, and so many of our members have a criminal defense background. But we're looking to transition their practice to help clients with compliance and invite me to speak. I jumped on the chance. On the rise in cannabis business clients, my firm got into this shortly after I-502, Washington State's voter-approved Initiative 502 in 2012, and made the strategic decision that it's a great fit with our skill set. The sweet spot for our existing regulatory practices is with wineries, breweries, and distilleries. So we're now flexing all of those same muscles and using a lot of that same concept to help cannabis businesses form relationships with those state agencies. And we're seeing this become a very sturdy section of what we're doing day to day. My practice changes daily, but cannabis is about a third of my practice, which is a huge change from what I was doing prior to January of 2014. On learning from Colorado, we've been a touch behind, but pesticides have become the hot topic now in Washington. Colorado was the first state that we saw more actively doing product recalls and looking at those issues of consumer safety. So we're looking at everything that's happening as a model and advising clients based on those successes and implementing regulation and making sure new businesses are set up properly from the beginning. Take action, NORML around the world. Outside of NORML's daily work from its Washington, D.C. headquarters, there are 155 active chapters in the United States and 8 active international chapters, all of which hold meetings and events year-round. NORML also hosts a winter conference in Key West, Florida, which Strope says is way different than Aspen. Up until now, there have been very little reform in Florida, and our attorneys who attend there prefer to keep it focused on traditional criminal defense skills. But that could soon change too. An effort to legalize medical marijuana in Florida in 2014 fell short of the 60% supermajority required for a constitutional amendment. The state will have a similar measure on the ballot this November. The Key West Legal Seminar is held at the Pier House Resort in Caribbean Spa from December 8th through the 10th, 2016. For information on how to get involved in your state's local chapter or attend either conference, visit NORML.org. I went and woke up looking a little more because I realized I hadn't even finished my breakfast. My husband walked out the door and I started reading and I was like, oh, I just read 4 articles that are so interesting. I'm just going to jump right up and start doing this. The other thing is, what is my breakfast? Okay, so it's tomato, cucumber, and salmon cream cheese. So it's kind of like bagel and lox kind of thing, which I love. Oh my God. Like a cheap Noah's bagels. Okay. So let's see. I was going to tell you that I'm almost finished saving up the money for building my next guitar. And that's why I haven't been buying a lot of weed and I've been going through shake and making keef pucks and stuff, is because I'm having to kind of survive off of what's coming off the products that are coming off my plants as I trim. So I got some nice, lower branches, which, just turns out to be this shake, all right? So it's mostly shake. But really what it is it's the sucker buds that were at the bottom of the branches that are taking from the tops, because I got one that's just about done. And I'm getting ready to harvest it. I'm very happy. It turned out pretty good. Not fabulous. I've had bigger buds, but it's done and it works and I'm happy. And it doesn't taste bad. So it's amazing that my really half-ass attempts and being drawn away into my mother-in-law's life for 2.5 weeks or whatever, I thought I was going to lose the plants. And I had a pesticide problem, or a pest problem that I dealt with a little bit of soap and water, just on the plant. So I was like very happy with this. I'm happy with the way this is turning out. It's not the biggest, crystalliest buds I've ever grown, but for being like having so much going on this year, I'm amazed I got this done. This has been a really crazy year for us. Just so many crazy things going on. So let me show you what I got here. Remember, I got the keef off the leaf. So this is, what I crumbled up from the sucker buds, which are just little unformed buds that all form the bottom of the branch near the base stem. And they're never going to get super big, and they just take energy away from the top buds. So as they form, I tear them out of there so that the stem is nice and clean and I can see in there and make sure there's no bugs or problems or anything. And then I can use that material for something while I'm waiting for my buds to mature, right? And this is the way I've kind of been dealing with it, because I don't know any better and I'm learning on my own. And wouldn't it be nice if there was like a college or a local community college class I could just go take and learn more about this? But no, we're not there yet. We're still here at the end of Prohibition, where everybody is still a fucking idiot. Okay, so hopefully I'll have my money together, because I need about 80 bucks and I'm about at 63. So I'll get my money together and I'll be able to send away for the parts, and then I can start buying weed again instead of having to save my weed money, because I really want this guitar. I really want to do this project. I'm just dying to get this done. And I think I'm going to need it pretty soon, too, because I'm going to need some kind of a travel guitar to deal with being over at my mother-in-law's quite a bit, because I'm going to need something to do. There's a lot of downtime. It's kind of boring. Now, this is interesting. Huh. What happened to, like, the stories that I posted this morning? Did I not post them? I must not have posted them. That was pretty dumb. That was dumb. Now I have to go back and deal with this. Okay. And that's okay, because I'm just going to go to I closed the folders and I did not post them on my Tumblr, because I told you, I got up, I started reading, and I was like, oh no, I got to tell people these are interesting. So, and then, I didn't do what I was supposed to do to make sure I kept everything in line. Let me go into my documents where all these things end up in my expression coder folder for the ones that I encoded today. A second. What in the... Why is this thing not... Hello? Load it. Load it. What are you doing?
The Cannabist. Cannabist.com.
Okay, so that's that one. And that was like a sake. So we're starting at the top. I have to go into all these stupid folders and dig now. Hope I hear my husband. Okay, so that was 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then the next one. There we go. Open. Kelly.
This is for all you rippers out there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
DNA.com.
I forgot this one. Shut up. Okay, so here's one I was going to say for all the rippers. I'd forgotten about this one. Hey, honey. Okay, so I forgot about this one, but this is local pot theft is interstate commerce, SCOTUS says. In other words, it's 20 years for stealing one pot plant or a marijuana joint from a medical patient now. It's 20 federal years. Steal my weed, you get 20 years. Yeah, wow. I don't think that's fair, but wow. So let's take a look at that. This is for all you rippers out there. BNA.com. Local pot theft is interstate commerce, SCOTUS says. June 20th, robberies targeting marijuana are subject to federal jurisdiction, even if the drugs were homegrown. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled June 20th, 2016. In Taylor versus United States, the court's board application of the Hobbs Act permitting federal prosecution of robberies or extortion that affects interstate commerce means that a robbery targeting even a single cigarette of homegrown marijuana could result in federal prosecution. I hope you're listening, rippers. Yeah, things just got real. That result is straightforward and dictated by our precedent, Gonzalez versus Reich. Okay, I'm not going to read all that. Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. wrote for the 7-1 court. The decision underscores that all the marijuana activities businesses are doing under the cover of state legalization laws are still criminal under federal law. Professor Marcia Cohen of the University of California Hastings College of Law told Bloomberg BNA June 20th. Cohen's scholarship focuses on food and drug law. But the case probably doesn't change very much in the world of marijuana legalization. Sam Mendez of the University of Washington School of Law's Cannabis Law and Policy Project, Seattle, told Bloomberg BNA June 20th. Drug theft. This case does not deal with legal or illegal drug sales. Instead, it deals with drug theft. Here, Anthony Taylor and his Southwest Goons gang targeted drug dealers for a series of robberies in their homes, the court said, although Taylor made off with very little, a couple of cell phones, some jewelry, $40, and a marijuana cigarette. He was convicted under the Hobbs Act, which carries a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. The court rejected Taylor's argument that the Hobbs Act required that the government prove that the robbery was related to interstate commerce. In Reich, the Supreme Court said that Congress can regulate the market for even purely local marijuana under the Commerce Clause, the court explained. Because Congress may regulate these interstate activities based on their aggregate effect, the interstate commerce, it follows that Congress may also regulate interstate drug theft, the court held. Lone dissent. The dissent is Thomas's fifth lone dissent this term, according to research conducted by Bloomberg BNA. Of the 8 cases decided this term, the one justice in dissent, Thomas, is the only justice to have been in lone dissent more than once. The other lone dissenters this time are Alito, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Sonia Sotomayor. Thomas may be discovering that he is the last vestige of the old guard, the conservatives on the court, now that Justice Anthony Scalia is gone. Little said. Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. and Alito are more of the new guard, he added. They aren't as rooted in the states' rights version of federalism, Little said. Another notch. Cohen wondered why the federal government even got involved in the case. When you think of home invasion, you think of the local police, she said. But the case demonstrates that federal government isn't ceding its marijuana policy to states, Mendez said. Marijuana is still a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substance Act, and the federal government isn't going to change its stance just because Washington and Colorado legalized it, he said. Still, in case the case isn't likely to become a landmark decision, Menendez said. It's just another notch in the bedpost for how the federal government approaches marijuana. Moreover, the case is unlikely to affect Commerce Clause jurisprudence in general, Mendez said. The Commerce Clause power has always been known to be very broad, Cohen said. While this case grafts that broad understanding, of interstate commerce into the Hobbs Act, the court goes to great lengths to try to limit the case to this particular set of circumstances, namely robberies targeting drug dealers, weakens protections. That was still too broad for Justice Clarence Thomas, however, who was the only justice to dissent. The decision weakens long-standing protections for criminal defendants by relieving the government of its especially high burden of proving every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, he said. Here, the majority holds that, as a matter of law, the interstate commerce element is met, however, the target of the robbery is a drug dealer, Thomas said. Thomas' dissent is fueled by his federalism concern. Rory Little, also at UC Hastings College of Law, told Bloomberg BNA June 20th. Thomas is concerned with the reach of the federal government and what limits can be placed on its ability to encroach on states' police powers, Menendez said. Isn't that interesting, Rippers? 20 years for stealing pot plants under the Hobbs Act. Now, to be fair, I think it's not, 20 years is a hell of a lot for like one joint, okay? I don't think that's fair. But I like the fact that it falls under federal law, and that if you think, oh, I'm going to climb over the fence and rip off this medical marijuana patient of a few plants, I would like them to be a little bit afraid, reasonably afraid, that would cost them, Don't do that. That's a bad idea. So I thought that was great for all of us people that grow and worry about rippers, that you could get 20 years in a federal pen for ripping off a simple marijuana grower's plant. And what I liked was how Jumbo. I liked how Clarence Thomas was trying to come off like, well, they're only stealing from pot growers. I don't see why. It is interesting, like I was saying before, he seems to be the last holdout of the old guard, and everything is changing. Very dramatically. Jumbo. Yeah, it's not even 9 yet. It's 8:43.
Oh, I know.
I was saying, oh my gosh, I'm up so early, but I had I found things that were so interesting, so I just jumped right on. And then I forgot what they were. Trying to find them. Okay, the next one, I will confess I'm looking at.
MaryJane.com.
Okay. So I went into, because there was another one I started to read about Snoop Dogg's Mary Jane website, and it was from a geek magazine or something, but the minute I started reading it, I realized this is really an insulting article to everyone, to Snoop Dogg, to stoners, to everybody. You know, it was just like the person that wrote it, you could tell grudgingly wrote it. Like now that Microsoft is in it, I'm going to have to actually write tech news about fucking marijuana when I don't believe in it, man. Only stupid people smoke marijuana. You could just feel it reading the whole article, and I got about halfway through it and I was like, I don't like this. I'm leaving. I'm not reading that one. That one's terrible. But the reason that guy in a geek magazine is writing about uh, Snoop Dogg's website is because Microsoft got in the game. So here's Microsoft entering the weed biz is a big deal, and here's why. MaryJane.com. Microsoft entering the weed biz a big deal, and here's why. Microsoft partnered with California startup Kind to support in support of legitimizing the marijuana market. While we all want cannabis to be legal for adult use across the great nation, there is one big issue: banking. Investors are spooked by this subject, and it's one of the first questions one might encounter when fundraising for a cannabis startup. What about the banking issue? Cannabis businesses have a difficult time finding and keeping bank accounts. Federally regulated banks won't touch cannabis income. Many banks shut down commercial accounts when they see companies named like Green Care Collective, hypothetical name, on the register. If your source of income is derived from cannabis commerce, you may find that you are ineligible for a loan from federal banks as well. They won't recognize your paycheck as income. Some businesses choose an alternative to brick and mortar or digital banking systems, instead banking with Mother Earth. We've heard rumors of convenience stores in the Emerald Triangle selling double ply garbage bags for the sole purpose of cultivators burying their stockpiles of cash. As has been demonstrated in states like Colorado and Washington, legitimacy for the industry is gaining through compliance and tax revenue for the state. Companies such as MJ Freeway are already offering business accounting services for cannabis operations. They process all transactions in addition to what is called seed to sale. Seed to sale refers to the action of tracking the activity of the plant as it travels through the supply chain from seed stage to the time it enters the consumer market as a crude bud, edible, or extract. This is the area where Microsoft is making a big splash. Microsoft is partnering with California software startup, cleverly named Kind, to offer a similar service at the municipal level. Executives at Microsoft intend to secure government contracts for this type of software in locations where cannabis is legal. As part of a partnership, Kind will be utilizing the MS Azure cloud service for data storage. Kind also offers hardware, kiosks, and are installed that are installed in cannabis stores, collectives, where consumers can deposit cash in the kiosk as a means to track the payment at a point of sale. Most collectives can't afford credit card purchases because Visa and MasterCard don't support marijuana sales. I have a feeling that the banks not supporting marijuana sales is going to hurt the banks in the long run, because I think what they're doing is they're creating an atmosphere where humans can figure out how to live without them. And that might be a gigantic mistake. What happened last time in this country when people started hiding their money under the mattress and the banks had to beg people to put their money in the bank because nobody trusted the banks anymore? Comes around, goes around. And the banks deserve to get fucked in the ass. So any fucking in the ass that the banks get, I'm all for. If it's brought by marijuana, serendipity, you know. While Microsoft is not actually touching cannabis or interacting with vendors, they are doing the cannabis industry a big favor in the light of the government perspective. When one of the largest tech companies in the world takes a gamble on pot, people listen. In the eyes of the states where cannabis is legal, the service is meeting a real need, and government entities want to work with major players in tech. Another benefit of this partnership is that Microsoft public relations exposure, people with business acumen and money to invest who were previously blind to the cannabis movement are now going to open their eyes to the considerations for companies like MedMen, founded by Adam Bierman. This is a step in the right direction towards achieving funding at the industrial level. MedMen offers turnkey business solutions as well as sleek dispensary located in West Hollywood. California. MedMen partnered with private equity firm Privateer Holdings to launch the $100 million MedMen Opportunity Fund last week. They intend to attract large cap funding and will likely leverage the announcement to boost top-tier investment. Members of the cannabis industry who have been working on the front lines to make the marketplace tend to support their own. Time will tell if this perspective will hold up under the pressure of global corporatization, such as Microsoft entering the industry. I want to tell you these things so badly, I forget. Smoke weed. Forget, you know. I'm like, oh, wait till you hear this next one. Okay. I've been avoiding the Sanders stories because I'm going to support Hillary Clinton, although I am a huge fan of what Sanders has done and his supporters. And if they ever come up again, I'm on their side. Frankly, once Hillary is out of the way, there's nobody else is going to pull me away from somebody like Sanders or anybody that his supporters, frankly, are interested in. Because I was very impressed with what they had accomplished. And I hope they can accomplish more. Okay, so here is how Sanders is going to try to push the Democratic platform at the convention because he's not giving up. And he's going to try to, see how I don't smoke because I'm going to tell you this. He's going to try to get those fucking idiots in the Democratic platform to adopt marijuana as part of the platform. And this is a big deal. California's Democratic Party has adopted it, and they did not do it during Prop 19, and they have done it now. Gavin Newsom has adopted it. If the Democratic platform adopts this, then by abstention, Hillary Clinton has to. So this becomes much greater a force than financing her campaign, which is what police unions can do for her and prison unions. But that gets offset if it becomes the overall Democratic platform that marijuana enforcement has been unjust and must be changed in the law, and it must be regulated, and it's not dangerous. Once those things have been embraced by the Democratic Party and their leader, the police unions and all those guys, it doesn't matter anymore. Because all the money in the world is not going to put that Humpty Dumpty back together. It's off the wall, smashed on the ground, and that's it. Toy is broken, okay? Now, the police understand this, and they're gearing up for their own kind of assault, I'm sure, because they're going to have a budgetary shortfall between being able to make money off of prohibition and make money off of marijuana taxes, because cities like mine and counties like mine have not taken responsibility and regulated. And because of that, there's going to be a monetary pitfall for the police that they will have to try to fill with some sort of unfair, ridiculous, and taxpayer time wasting bus in a final money grab. And we are already seeing that in other locations where the police they're desperate, you know. So, and we've got little indications on why we should be careful at this ending point in the game, because even here at the end, you could still get shot in the battle. So be careful. Be careful on the battlefield. There could be a guy laying out there pretending to be dead and he jumps up and shoots you. We've all seen this in the fucking movie. Keep your head on a swivel. Not till they're buried in the ground do you stop fighting. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Marijuana.com. Sanders pushes marijuana reform in Democratic platform. Federal marijuana law reform could become an official part of the National Democratic Party platform. That's if supporters of presidential candidate Bernie Sanders have their way. You want real change in this country, you want it now, and are prepared to take on the political cowardice and powerful special interests which have prevented that change from happening, Sanders, a U.S. Senator from Vermont, wrote in an email to his supporters. One place we think the agenda of these 12 million Americans should be reflected is in the official platform of the Democratic Party. The email links to a form where Sanders supporters can choose the issues they think are most important to put into the platform. One of the 24 options reads, remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substance Act. During the course of the campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination, Sanders has staked out a marijuana law reform position that goes further than any other serious candidate has. In addition to calling for the descheduling of marijuana and pushing for federal governments to respect state cannabis laws, Sanders said he would personally vote for legalization if it were on the ballot in his state. An analysis of by marijuana.com earlier this week found that at least 12 state Democratic Party platforms this year are calling for cannabis law reform. That raises questions about when the National Party will officially get on board with supporting legalization. Polls show that a significant majority of Democratic voters are in favor of ending prohibition, and a growing number of the party's elected officials in Congress and state legislators are actively working to enact cannabis legislation. The Democratic National Committee's platform drafting committee is currently conducting a series of regional forums around the country to take testimony from advocates about what planks it should adopt this year. The 15-member committee was appointed by DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is not a fan of marijuana, who does not support marijuana legalization, along with the presidential campaign of Sanders' presumptive nominee Hillary Clinton. Unlike Sanders, Clinton says she isn't yet ready to make up her mind on whether legalization of marijuana is a good policy. But she has called for modest cannabis law reforms, including moving the drug to Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substance Act and allowing states to set their own laws without federal interference, she says. She wants to gather more evidence about how legalization is being implemented in states that have ended prohibition before she decides whether to personally support it. In other words, she's going to wait till more. It's a sure thing. And then she's going to come swinging in, and it'll all be her idea. I do love that woman, but she is, a politician. Let's not forget. They said it best in 1776 when John Adams was speaking to the conservatives that were deciding for whether or not we would break with England. And he said, you always hold to the back of an issue until it becomes a sure thing. You cool conservative men of politics. The Democratic, but the platform also seemed to express support for the current war on drugs approach of interdiction, smuggling, shipments, and arresting traffickers. We must help states, local, territorial, and tribal law enforcement. Tribal law enforcement, which is now federal and didn't used to be. That part, that's the stuff that pisses me off, because that whole sentence right there is all the evil. Okay, but the platform also seems to express support for all these evils. The war on drugs, which is a racist war, and a war against the poor. Okay? Approach of interdicting smuggler shipments and arresting traffickers. We must help states, local territories, and tribal law enforcement, which also strengthens their right to go onto tribal lands, which is not our fucking property, and tell the people we already fucked in the ass what to do some more. These are the platforms that belong to the Democratic Party. This is why I left. This is why I left. This is why I'm no longer a Democrat. Because they suck up to the shit. They try to get the unions, the police unions, to vote for them. They try to get the fucking prison unions to vote for them. And in order to do that, they have to trick them into thinking that they're all for this stuff. And then later, they will fuck them in the ass. And the next thing they'll know, they're going to be getting paid somewhere else. Or they're not going to be getting paid at all. And they've got your vote. This is the kind of thing I never liked about them. Because they used to do it to women and black people. Gays. Oh yes, we're all for you. You're part of our platform. And then you get left at the altar. Well, I have a feeling the next people to get left at the altar is the drug war and shipments and arresting traffickers and helping state and local, territorial, and tribal law enforcement. I have a feeling is what's going to get left at the fucking altar. But thanks for your vote. Because that's not the way the country's going, kids. And if these law enforcement people had any intelligence in their brain whatsoever, they would immediately embrace the tax money from marijuana and then offset the loss that they are going to have after the drug war ends. But I don't give them that much credit, frankly. This could be a huge financial win for them. They're brainless. What can you do? Dumb is dumb. It just really angers me when I read that, because those are the platforms of the Democratic Party that really fucking anger me. Why are we supporting treading on tribal lands? Haven't we done enough to those people? What kind of scum are you? Let's see. Okay. And tribal lands enforcement work together to combat and prevent drug crime and drug and alcohol abuse. Bullshit. It's to take advantage of those people, which are blights on our communities. That is the old super predator argument. That is why Hillary Clinton cannot yet embrace marijuana, because she's still attached to the years when her and Bill were doing very good impressions of a conservative candidate because conservatism was popular. They are now arriving at a time when it is not, and it looks very unattractive on them. It is like they walked into the room wearing bell bottoms. Who the fuck is doing that nowadays? And they're not alone. Apparently, on the Supreme Court, the Thomas is the last holdout for that same said old-fashioned paradigm. This is where your win becomes a lose. Sure, you won in the 80s with all of that bullshit, but not in the 2000s. You're not going to win. It'll hurt you. It makes me angry to even read it. It sounds fucking horrible. In an email to his supporters, Sanders said it's important to pressure the party to take pro-reform stands on issues like marijuana and others on which it has not boldly led in the past. The platform matters because it is a document that enshrines the values and goals of the Democratic Party. He wrote, "It's a document to which we can point and say, this is what we believe and this is what we fight for." And so the Democratic Party has a choice. in the coming weeks, and that choice is whether or not to embrace a bold, fearless, progressive platform that has the potential of transforming the country for generations. If it is not known if the current platform committee members have already discussed adopting marijuana or drug policy reform planks in the 2016 document. I doubt they will very much. They're trying to win a presidential election. They have to sucker a bunch of conservatives that don't like Donald Trump. So get ready. You're going to see fucking big hair, big gold earrings, and big shoulder pads come back from the 80s, while these Democrats, like Hillary Clinton, wait, I got cut off there. Wait, they try to woo, these conservative voters away from the Conservative Party because the Conservative Party is offending the classic conservative voter. And Hillary Clinton is going to look very attracted to them. So I understand what the Democratic Party is doing. And I understand why. But it is one of the reasons I don't like them. And any party would do this. It's not just, this is politics. It's the ugly part of politics, is you have to also somewhat embrace the assholes of life, including all these fucking law enforcement goddamn unions that aren't doing a damn thing for their employees, by the way. How about if I take this hit first? Can't believe I keep doing this. Talk, don't smoke. You know, it's really nice to not have that fucking harsh leaf taste anymore. I mean, it's just a little hint of it in there because there's still like little crystally sugary leaves on the ends, and not all of them are crystally, and you get that taste every once in a while. But I'm like, oh my god, I am so glad I'm past the point where it tastes like hay. Plus, it's nice to smoke your own weed. See, look, not bad. I've been flushing it good. I'm preparing to harvest one of them because it's ending soon, sooner than the others, which is nice to have them staggering out. That's going to help me through the summer, Okay, so, pardon me. The next story I'm going to go into is exactly what I was talking about, why people are concerned at the end of at the end of the drug war, is that when you have these organizations that have made so much money over so many years on these type of laws, when you take all of that away from them and you don't have some other way to make up for that shortfall, there's going to be a behavior that comes along with that are, these officials are probably going to engage in. And that is trying to figure out how to make a final money grab to make up for that, coming shortcome, They know that winter is coming, right? Like Game of Thrones. So they're stockpiling. Okay, so one of the things that makes activists like me concerned about that, just sitting in my house, not talking to cops, not being out in the world, but concerned, reading the news and everything. Canada, what's happening in Canada? Remember how Trudeau's like, oh yes, we're going to legalize weed and it's going to be a wonderful world of amazingness. Is that happening? Fuck no, it is not happening. Okay, so he's dragging his feet, the government's dragging his feet, and meanwhile, while they're dragging their feet, then they're punishing dispensaries in Toronto that are actually servicing patients because they compete with the shitty LPs that are shit and is all that stupid country has to offer those poor people up there. Besides their amazing black market, which is one of the greatest sources of fine cannabis in the entire world. And they're trying to kill it in favor of shit weed and cut off the consumer from choice, which is a horrifying nightmare. It sounds like a nightmare to an American like me. That you would say, no, you can't have choices, And what am I talking about? If you choose a legal provider in Canada, you can only choose between two. They only have 4 strains of weed each. If they're all shit, you're finished. You're just stuck. That's it. If you choose a legal provider, you give up your right to grow. So either you grow sketchy, who knows where you got the seeds weed, or you got the seeds from the black market and you hope the black market keeps going, or you have to buy a legal provider weed. And I mean to the point where apparently the bottles are a big deal. Because if you're walking around with your own fancy bottle, well, that's not legal provider weed. You're breaking the law. You have so what the bottle is a problem. And I'm going to show you where that came from. This is a very dusty bottle, and the label's peeling off I put on it. But this is a very old bottle that the government gave out when Prohibition ended. And here at the top, embossed on the bottle, it says, prohibited by federal sale, right? Wait a minute, it's hard to read the fucking thing. Where's my light? My blindness is, it's too dark in here. This thing's weird. Federal law forbids sale on reuse of this bottle. So federal law prohibits sale of reuse on this bottle. These bottles were created by the federal government at the end of Prohibition because they were afraid that the black market was going to make a bunch of money selling illegal bootleg alcohol. Some of it was not safe, bathtub alcohol, to consumers at the end of Prohibition, once they repealed Prohibition. So the government's plan was to create government liquor stores to have their legal booze put into these official bottles, and these bottles could not be refilled and resold. Now, obviously, probably the gangs got a hold of these bottles, and these bottles would have been valuable if somebody owned it. They could sell the bottle to somebody because you could continue to refill the thing and say, oh, yeah, so medical, yeah, this is weed from the government. See what I'm saying? Same idea, different country. We dumped it immediately after Prohibition because we knew that was not going to work. It seems like Canada is kind of clinging to the idea, and it's a bad one. We don't make these bottles anymore because we knew this was not something that our government should be involved in, and the only reason we did it was because we were concerned that the mobs and gangs, and violence with the Tommy guns, with the big fucking thing on the front, okay, was going to make money and profit and stay in power if we allowed them, to make money at the end of Prohibition. And these people supposedly were so dangerous. Now, of course, that was old-time thinking. That goes along with, oh, that one's got a heavy ridge brow, and look how close his eyes are. You can tell he's a criminal. It's old-fashioned thinking to think that you couldn't easily, and I think watching something like The Sopranos or watching something like, oh my gosh, what is it? Fuck that other fucking movie. The Godfather. Okay, if you're watching The Godfather, that guy was trying to get into a fucking legitimate business. You could sell a legitimate business idea to these guys. Legitimate businessmen are easily as dangerous as the mob. And there are lots of murders and espionage and things that go on in legitimate businesses and that they could engage in if that is something that fulfills their life. There's no need for you to be in the black market to be involved in some sort of illegal practices in order to further the gains of your business. So it is possible to get people to come over the legal side, and how legal really is the legal side. A lot of people die in plane crashes. You ever notice that? Whenever there's a plane crash, it seems to be important people on the plane, like Kennedy plane, was that guy up in Alaska that nobody liked with the bridge to nowhere, thought that the internet was a series of tubes, plane, yeah, plane, Scalia pillow, there's still lots of work to be done for evil people within governments. You don't have to be part of the mob. The biggest mob on the planet is the governments and the corporations. That's where the real gangsters are. You're low level. They want to get up to that level. It's not that hard to entice criminals away from criminal activity. They'd love to step up to what some of the big corporations and the big governments are able to get away with. I think it's ridiculous that the idea that somehow they wouldn't change their ways. No, they wouldn't change their ways. They'd legitimize them, because there's lots of people do exactly what they do, and it's legitimized because it's called war or a police action or a drug bust. But they're doing as much shooting up, beating up, threatening as any gang. It's just that they're doing it for the right reasons now. See what I mean? The end justifies the means becomes the purveyance, the realm of legitimized people. The end justifies the means doesn't really work too hot with the mob. The end justifies the means is something you tell somebody when you're trying to establish yourself as legitimate. No one in the mob is going to explain away why they do things. Only governments, corporations, and people in legitimate society have to do that. So I don't see how it would be that difficult to get the black market to come into the regular market. I don't really see a big difference. I really don't. It's just what flag you're fighting under, right? Okay, so let's take a look at this about the bus in Toronto. Freddie Pritchard, how I miss you. You were so right about everything. I don't blame you for disappearing. Apparently, legalization in Canada has turned into insanity and nothing but the police making a final huge money grab. Let's take a look.
Being close to nature is what I live for.
Let's not do that. Oh, Jesus. Dare to dream that you're going to win a lottery. Get the fuck out of here. Dare to dream you're going to lose $5 buying pieces of paper that aren't worth shit.
This just in to CP24. A number of raids are taking place right now in the downtown core at cannabis stores. One of the locations is Cannabis Culture on Queen West. And joining us now live on the phone is Jody Emery, the owner of Cannabis Culture. Jody, what's happening? Did you have any idea this was coming?
Yesterday, our store at 801 Queen Street West received a letter from the Toronto Police letting us know that they are aware that cannabis is being sold on premises. Today, I received an alert from my employees that the police are on site. I had someone go over and take photos, and yes, the police are there. However, they didn't come in with as much force as last time, because clearly the public backlash said that's not necessary and not warranted. But this is a continuation of a discriminatory law enforcement using police resources, using taxes to go after something the public supports.
Jody, when you look big picture at what's happening right now with this situation, your livelihood as well, and the people, veterans and poor marginalized people and others, seniors who need this medication that they're legally allowed to get, what's your feeling? Do you think that this is just the beginning, or do you hope this will end soon and that we'll have some movement by the federal government to get this thing wrapped up?
Well, Canadians want marijuana to be legal, and legalization means you're not arrested for it and you have access to it. The courts have repeatedly declared that the federal program for medical marijuana does not meet the needs and is unconstitutional, considering patients. But legalization is coming for all adults, and that's why at Cannabis Culture, where for 20 years we fought for legalization.
Isn't that interesting that they even went after Cannabis Culture dispensary itself? Okay, like I said, what this is really all prompted by is the LPs, the legal providers that are Canadian drug dealers that give you shit weed that comes in a plastic bottle and you're not allowed to see what you're purchasing ahead of time. And once you get it, you can't send it back. You can't complain about it. You're stuck. And you get only one chance to go to another legal provider. If you choose a legal provider in Canada, you lose your right to grow. These are horrible conditions for a consumer to have to exist under. It clearly favors the manufacturer and not the consumer. And the government is deeply complicit in this. Now, I completely doubt what Trudeau has said. I think that Trudeau has lied. And legalization in Canada is going to be a disgusting monopoly where the government sells you irradiated and, insecticide weed, and you're supposed to just put up with it. And if you wanted to open a business or try to manufacture something that was better, forget it. Canada, if you don't have a deal with that gang or that, mob, if you don't cut a deal with that mob boss, you're not going to be in business because they own that territory. This is exactly the kind of thing America should be terrified of. Can you imagine the government selling marijuana to the citizens for medical purposes or recreational? What a nightmare scenario that would be. And to have that right above us up north, seriously, apparently Canada has absolutely no intention of actually competing on the open market, because once America hits it, we allow people to see our products. We have consumer protections. We don't use the government in this way to protect poor business practices of a few guys that are giving payola to the government so they can stay open while all the little guys get shut down. This is really mob style fucking enforcement. This is mob style enforcement. It will be very interesting to see how Trudeau is viewed, say, 8 years from now, when California is fully legal and well up and running, and the rest of America will probably have flipped by then. It will be very interesting to see how Trudeau is viewed at that point. And he's not going to be the shining, young, good-looking, hopey guy that he was at the beginning. He's going to look like a fat-ass liar and just another government shill. But like I said, this is another reason why California growers are a little concerned, because obviously the police are making a final attempt to make a money grab. Much like the story I read yesterday with how they're trying to say that medical marijuana is actually synthetic so that they can make a money grab on medical marijuana patients because they know they're going out of business. And because towns, cities, and states don't regulate and offer the police offsetting tax money to prevent them from losing their minds and doing things that are irrational, there's nothing to stop them, And this is going to be looked at in history as a time when our cities, counties, and leadership failed us horrifyingly and left us to the whims and desires of police officers that got cut off from a money source because of cowardly, and we've seen plenty of cowardice this month, haven't we? Cowardly senators. Cowardly hide under the desk senators. I bet you if somebody walked into Congress with a gun, an AR-15, and started shooting, things in this country would change drastically and quickly. I bet Paul Ryan would be the first to dive under a desk. That manly man. Anyway, this is one of the reasons why California growers are concerned, because we see what has happened. The police have been fed on the flesh of the innocent, and now they won't be able to do that anymore. They're going to go a little crazy because they're going to make a final attempt to get as much as they can before they get cut off, because they're as addicted as a heroin addict to this money. Okay, so that's my show for Friday, and I hope you got as much interesting information out of that as I did. I really thought the whole thing with NORML was very interesting. I mean, you're talking about a political... It makes me feel bad. Here's how it makes me feel bad. President Barack Obama was a supporter of a activist newspaper called The Acorn, which I thought was kind of a conspiracy theory, because his whole Obama symbol during the 2008 election was it was directly taken from Acorn. It was harkening back on that design, and I pointed that out on MySpace and saying, look, he's part of this. Well, in fact, Acorn and the Weathermen and all these guys, they did do stupid shit, but it was a difficult time, you know. I remember my teacher talking about the Weathermen in junior high school here in Ventura, and what they did, that no one agreed with bombing the fuck anything at all. And we went through a brief period where we thought maybe activism would involve violence. No, it doesn't. You totally lose your support the minute you embrace violence of any kind. And they're always going to try to use that against you anyway. They're always going to try to make it out like you're way more violent than you actually are, because they have to demonize you in order to be able to subjugate you, right? So at the time, I was very critical, because I was not for President Obama. Where did this guy come from? He seems like an inside dude. He seems like he's some dude that's a puppet. You know, why did this guy just come out of the blue? You know, but perhaps that was due to my own ignorance about back east politics, and I hadn't been paying attention. And, you know, because Clinton also appeared out of the blue. Bill Clinton, I never fucking heard of that guy. Suddenly, boom, he's running for president. And he's charismatic and he's winning, you know. And it made me nervous. Obama made me nervous. So that's why I delved into these things. Okay, so now I feel bad, because NORML and our movement's going to turn out to be the exact same fucking thing. That at one time we did a lot of things that were illegal. And we gladly did them because we thought we were fighting for our rights. And they weren't always the best choices for our movement. And we're going to have to live with those consequences. But now I do feel kind of bad criticizing somebody else's movement. When I see that my own movement may be going down the same path, that one day there could be a lawyer for NORML standing next to a president or standing next to a senator, and I don't agree with both of them, and yet they're doing exactly what I asked them to do, which is regulate. And now I need to make consensus, you know, make a you know, I have to change my mind now. I can't behave as an activist anymore. Now I have to behave as someone who's helping to build an industry, and that's with a lot less, you know, emotion and passion. I'm not saying don't be passionate, but emotion and more sort of clear-headed thinking about how things are going to best turn out. And like I said, it is business, and business is fucking real cutthroat, dog eat dog, but it is legal. And so it's like we're entering from the frying pan into the fire kind of thing. You're no longer illegal, but now you're going to be part of the real business world where real dangerous people exist, and that's going to be a whole new experience and learning experience. And we may not even be the people that end up being the champions of that or whatever, because our fight is over now. Yeah. Which I think is great. You know, I was hoping for an end. Right on. I don't mind whistling my way home with my red badge of courage. I'm cool with that. With my gun. You know, I fought in the field. Now I'm going home back to the farm. You know what I mean? Get the crops in. I'm cool with that. I have no problem. I have none of this desire to continue, you know, on into the future. Let somebody else deal with that. I think that they're going to have a perspective which is different than mine. I would have never thought of. An experience that is completely different than mine. I come from the time of prohibition. My entire behavior is based on that. And so I have to be willing to accept that I am a product of that age. And that's something I'm stuck with, you know. And I may not be the harbinger of this, you know, people like me may not be the harbinger of this new age. And I may have to compromise some of my beliefs in order to get there. And I'm okay with that. I think that's fine. I think that's healthy. I don't see how I could possibly have all the answers anyway. I'm surprised I got this far. I'm amazed I wasn't just like, no, you're wrong. Yeah. I was amazed. I just kept going. I was like, oh, and this and this and this and that and this and that and this and that and this and this and that and that. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. And then I began to realize this is a really big lie. Wow. They can't defend any of it. Wow. This is going to be a really big win. It just, you know, things dawned on me. And it even makes me sort of nervousy and prickly feeling, you know, that anxiety feeling to think back in the last year or so, the battles that we've been through and the arguments and how you felt. And yet, I'll bet you when I look back, I'm going to think I overreacted and I should have seen that was coming. Hindsight's 2020. You know, it's going to be interesting. I think we should have a debrief moment where we definitely take a look at what we accomplished, how we got here, the mistakes we made, and what people could learn in the future from that. You know, prohibitionists, I would love to see that out of them. I don't expect that. My son wisely recognized that you can't win everybody over. And that's what I learned from the union. As heartbreaking as it is, some people are just going to stick to their guns, even if they're the last ones on the planet to do so. You just lose them. And it's sad, but it is what it is. You can't win over everybody, you know. Okay, so I'll let you go, and you have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday, and hopefully we'll have something more, hopefully coming from the DEA sooner or later. I did read that the senators, Warren, and all these guys have sent another letter to the DEA requesting, hey, what's going on with that rescheduling thing? How's that going? What's going on? What's going on? People are talking out here, man. We're hearing things and not from you. We're curious. How's it going? What's up? Let's talk about it. You know? All right, so I'll see you. You stay high and goodbye. Warren's like, hey, send us a letter. Give me a call. DEA, give me a call. Text me. Tell me what's going on with that.